Past players, past legends, past legends.
We welcome David Palm aboard. Now, Palmy's a little bit different because we're a family friend, so we go back right well before Palmy played league footy. But David played 65 games for Norwood, 76 to 79, 79 goals, 91 games for West Perth, 80 to 82, and then going back to Perth after his career at Richmond, 1990 and 91, 91 games, 50, and for Richmond, where he played under 8 million coaches, and we'll certainly cover all of that. 83 to 88, 104 games, 38 goals, so 260 senior games, and also a season at Springvale as well. So nearly the 300 games. Palmy, welcome aboard, mate.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for joining us, mate. Well, we must start where it all started, was in your juniors, mate. Where did you play for your junior footy?
I was probably started off at when Norwood High was school, and then I played junior footy at Kenzie Gardens.
He had 26 goals in one game, I reckon, for Kenzie Gardens, wasn't it, Palmy?
Oh,
around there.
It was around that, but it's extended out to about 35 now over the years.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah, so you can see he may have dominated a bit.
Is that like the fish that got away? It was, started out at 20 centimetres and now has ended up at 60.
So no, McGill primary first, Palmy, and that side of things, obviously. Trying to think, is there any primary school representative sides, or mainly at Norwood High?
It's mainly at Norwood High. So McGill primary was the old Johnny Hancock was the coach there, but no, it was probably more the high school where you got into a little bit age groups and then progressed to Kenzie Gardens, and then on from there.
And at Norwood High, so David was year 12 when I was in first year, and Norwood High won the state championship, and in that we beat Henley, and Norwood High, in that Norwood High side was Robert Dolan, who didn't get a league game at Norwood and then rucked against Norwood and played in 3 Port Flags. But Dolan, Craig, Palm, Derrington, Michael Holliday, David Simon. So it was a fair side. Wow. And Ray Laddams got best on ground medal. That's father of Chris Laddams and a Gazer legend around the traps. So it was a bloody strong side. Turbs, when Greg Turnbull turned up at school, had a game. That mightn't have been Turbs' strength in life and that side of things. But yeah, it was a fair Norwood High side, Palmy.
It was. I think Robert Hall, whose brother John played there as well. So be reminiscent to me. There was a guy called Tim Morgan who also played there. Was a good mate of Darrow's and myself. So it was a very good side. David Simons, I think.
Yes, Simo played. Yep, halfback flank.
Yeah. So we're pretty strong side. So and Gillis Plains. I remember, I think they were our nemesis, because the Zubnik brothers played for Gillis Plains.
Yeah, yep.
Back in those days. So, yeah, it was always an interesting game.
And then going on to your, obviously, after school there, representing at Norwood at the under-17, under-19 level, is that right?
Yeah, I played, I played state 16s, I think.
Yep.
Progressed from there, and then got lucky. Got 2 great coaches in under 17s in Johnny Potter and Stritsky. Alex, I think
Alex,
it was.
Alex,
yep. Yeah, they were 2 my under 17 coaches, and they were great. And then I got lucky again. I had Mal Smith and Johnny Hall was the manager back in those days, and I was very lucky in my early years. I had great coaches and great managers.
There was also one other thing.
Was that Justin's dad?
Yes.
Yep.
Bart's dad.
Yep.
Palmy at Norwood High too broke the high jump record, and it was quite amusing because it basically became the only event still going on sports day. So he had the whole school barracking for him. On the high, I think that record stood for about 15 years, Palmy. So that was something as well.
Yeah, and I did that, and like the Kingsley Garden goals, it stretched from 6'1" to about 6'9", I think, at the moment.
Yeah, I
So
thought it might have been.
I would have won I would have won a few gold medals over the years.
Thought it might have been further than that by now, Palmy.
That's right. We've got time to stretch it out, and we can use this interview to stretch it a little bit further.
We may have allured to Palmy's parents earlier there, and Jim, there were no such things as roads in Jim's vernacular. It was always, now you went past the Feathers, turned at that corner, turned down, there was about there, the lights, you go there, you'll go past the Marrickville, keep going, the Robin Hood's on your right. That was Jim's whole language.
Wouldn't you love a Google Maps that did that?
Oh, he was pretty good Palmy, that Mr. Palm in that regard. So.
Yeah, Dad was pretty good there. He gets to the pub pretty quickly, so he never lacked a partner or two either.
And looking on a serious note, we'll bring this up. We'll go back and forth on various bits, but yeah, David's youngest brother, was intellectual disabilities and side of things, and so the Palm and Ashwood family had a lot of things together. So David's dad, Jim, and my dad, Ray, were real good mates, and Lorraine and his mum and Margaret were good, and that. So we spent a lot of time together, and I've always said I really, obviously not appreciate just the friendship, but the time spent with Andrew back then was, I've always just grown up with it, and it was just normal part of things, and Andrew too. My mum was a bit of Andrew's hero. There was always playing 8-ball with my mum, and Andrew never lost a game of 8-ball. Good luck in that regard, wasn't it, Palmy? You never beat him.
Yeah. No, he could never win.
So there was things in too. So Dad and Jim had to fix the television, so it couldn't be moved, and things like that. Yep. So it was a part of life with Andrew, which I greatly appreciated more, and it was Rick Neagle actually picked it. With his son, and one night at Norwood at a meeting, and so I just always and Neags actually even said, you've grown up around it, haven't you?
Yep.
So that's one thing with Andrew, and there's some big memories. He had a seizure in the water at Victor Harbour, and somehow my sister and I got him out of the water. I'm still buggered to this day how I did that, but Andrew was always a big part of life with the Palm and Ashwood families as well, Palmy.
Oh yeah, look, it's Andrew's not the first, he won't be the last, but it was just an interesting when you see your brother being born and everything seems normal, and then all of a sudden it's not, and then what your mum and dad go through by running the house, and then Dad running his business, and then looking after my other brother and my other sister, and all through our schooling and our sporting achievements and everything else. Like my brother was pretty successful at footy as well, with Norwood and in the country, in the regional South Australia as well. So looking back on all that, you think, holy hell, how did they do it? And with not a lot of outside financial help or assistance, and like Malcolm's saying, we relied heavily on family friends and friends of them, and then all the acquaintances we met, and then totally understand that some people didn't get it and some people did get it, and and totally understand where, one of those things, if you see, someone with a fairly significant birthmark on their face and they don't walk right and they don't talk right, well, and then they fall over and they have a seizure and people step away, I totally get that. But being on the inside of that, you had to deal with that on a daily basis like my mum and dad did every day.
And a credit to them, really. Back in the day, that there was no NDIS, there was no support services, and it sounds like they did a fantastic job.
They're both pretty bloody patient.
It was difficult, as I said. There was no outside help or anything else. So, they probably didn't get the credit they were due, both of them, in the end. But Yeah. Well, that was just it was their son. It was my brother, and we did the best we could.
Yep, with Jenny and Michael, and of course Jenny being a nurse, growing up doing nursing and that side of things as well. And Michael, Wally Miller, when I did interview Wally, his exact words were, "Michael Palmer's the biggest one who got away." He's always out of that. And if things had worked out differently, David may have just ended up playing at Norwood and that side of things if Michael had hung around. If things,
that was probably one goal in the back of my head and probably in the back of Dad's head. But you know, and even with me, like if I didn't. I shouldn't say it, but, you know, look, if I played in 78...
You should have.
I probably would have stayed. I probably wouldn't have left.
Yeah, but to your credit, you still hung around and played in 79. You didn't leave straight away.
I played in 79. I played in 79. So and then, who knows? Like, by moving over here, you look back, I probably would have never got to Richmond. So, you know, it works in funny ways, doesn't it?
So going back to your debut for Norwood against West Adelaide on, believe it or not, we're June 6th today, June 5th, 1976.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah, I remember playing on Robbie Donaldson on the wing there. Yeah. Remember the first game vividly. Yep. And I actually bought a picket all those years ago when the club were doing their
Yes, I did ring you on that one, Palmy. Yep.
Sponsorship there, and I'm glad, and I've seen it a couple of years ago. The picket's actually positioned right where my dad used to stand.
It is
on the wing there.
It is very close to where Jim and Lorraine and Jenny and Michael used to sit. Very much so.
Yeah. So I don't think that wasn't conjured up. That was just pure luck. So, but it was.
Stars aligned.
Yeah.
And what do you remember from your first game? Some highlights. Who were some of the players that you got to play with in that debut game?
Highlight was I survived, I suppose. In those in those days when you got dragged, you got dragged.
Yeah.
So, you know, at least I played the game out. But, you know, look, back in those days, and I rang Jim McLeany and correction later on his son, who's playing great footy for Adelaide. But, you know, like Neil Button and Craigie and Gags and Stazzer, of course, Roger, of course, Black Duck was there. So, not a bad side either.
Very good side. So in 76, and one of your highlights of 76 was you played in the absolute cliffhanger game against Carlton when we only won by 106 points. What a night that was.
Only?
Yeah.
Great night, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, they were good. They were good days. They were great games, you know, under lights there and Tuesday night, and sometimes you're freezing your nuts off. So, you know, it was a good atmosphere. So we won a couple of good games there.
So you played 22 games in 77, and as I said, you hung around in 79. You played 29 games, but the 1978 grand final, Palmy, and the way you bizarrely got told that you'd missed selection after playing well in the finals, especially against Glenelg, weird to say the least.
The mind still boggles.
Yeah, it does actually. Pete can see the look on my face.
I can see the look on your face. Exactly right.
Look, you know, that's as I say, if you know it happened, great. If it didn't, I'm not the only bloke to.
No, and at least you did play in a premiership. At least you did play in a premiership side on the day too. The reserves. It was a double header. It was a great day, but it's look, it's one of those things. Someone made a decision on what I'd done, but I played all the finals that year, so. Look, the way it was told and whatever, you know, that's, you know, unfortunately someone has to do it, and they did it, and whether they did it right or wrong, well, that's history. So, I don't bear any grudges with anyone. At least you played and so it was quite funny. So was it your 21st, or certainly your birthday? Was it your 21st? Not that long afterwards, and so Norwood is celebrating both wins, and poor Jim Darrington's there, and he's done a hammy, so he hasn't played in the grand final, and Sturt have lost. It wasn't a great night for Darrow, that's for sure.
No, No, and it was, like we played, as I say, we played at Norwood High together, and
Yes.
he lived on one side of the parade and was bound to Sturt, and I lived on the other and was bound to Norwood. So, to miss out like he did, well, there's another sad story as well.
So you transferred to WA in 80 in the bank. So that was the bank back then, wasn't it, Palmy?
Yeah, transferred in that. Well, it was sort of, I was coming in hurrying. I just wanted to move. I just don't, the same people were there, and I just sort of needed a change. And at that stage, in my own mind, I thought I wasn't ready for the VFA type of competition. So it just sort of fell into spot when Addo said he was heading back after his stint at Norwood.
Yep.
And I'd already had discussions with Claremont prior to that best and fairest night at Norwood, and I said, "Oh, I'll see you back. I'll see you in Perth." And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm just about to sign with Claremont." So before he tried to put me in a headlock, he said, "Wait a minute," and he made a phone call to Len Roper, who was the president, and Ron Buick, who was Dad was father of Darren Buick, Corey Buick, who I played with. And they flew over to Adelaide, and we had a chat, and I just liked the run of it. What I heard, it seemed a little bit Norwoodish. They were red and blue, and Addo was going back there, and it sort of all just fitted into the right space. So that's what I decided to do.
What was it like moving states? Obviously, you grew up in Adelaide and got the opportunity to go to Perth. Culturally, was it a little bit of a step forward, step backwards, side step? What was it like living over in Perth?
Oh, it was totally different. Like I basically knew Addo. My dad knew a couple of people in business and whatever, but I wasn't going to a spot where you had immediate friends. It was that your friends and family became the footy club. So, but weather-wise, I remember my first pre-season trial game. It was 41 degrees, and a great player at West Perth called Alan Watling, he was all covered in sunscreen. I said, "What the hell's going on?" And I soon found out in the first 5 minutes why he was wearing sunscreen. So, fairly warm, and the ground's a little bit bigger than Norwood Oval.
Yep. A little bit harder, I'm assuming, as well.
Oh, just sand, but just huge. Like it just, doing a 400 around Leederville Oval compared to Norwood Oval, like it seemed an eternity. Just the size of the grounds are humongous. Yeah.
And you were coached at West Perth by Graham Campbell.
Yes, I was. Yep, in my first year.
What'd you think of Graham?
He was pretty full on, wasn't he? Lovely bloke, lovely bloke, lovely family, and he was full on. He ate, drank. Well, he didn't drink, but he slept footy. Even when we go out for dinner on a Saturday night, after the game, he just kept talking about the day's game, whether we won or lost. So, and then we'd front up again Sunday morning to do our run around the lake. So, all good intentions, good ideas. He got people on side, and it definitely played for him for sure.
And the highlight of your time in Western Australia, though, go through a West Perth blind date night, David.
Oh, perfect match.
Perth what?
The West Perth blind date night. How you come on?
I've been very lucky, and then as I said, I knew really no one coming over, and there was it turned out to be a good friend and a good mate was Ron Wilson, and Ronnie he put me up in his house. Didn't know me from a bar of soap, but had a spare room and whatever. So he looked after me in my initial year, and then he was going out with a lovely girl called Karen, and then one of her relations, named Michelle, who ended up being my wife, I got invited around for dinner one night. So, yeah, just started out there just as a come around, meet and greet, and then ended up, well, you better stay with me. So here we are. Here we are 38 years ago.
That's a fantastic story.
Yes. No, well, don't worry.
We'll cover that.
Some other palm female shenanigans will come out later. So, yes. So, from there, Palmy, WA, unfortunately not a great deal of final success at West Perth either, and then ending up being drafted by Richmond.
Yeah, no, we were stiff with under Graham, but you got to go back in those days, like Claremont, and this is where I look back and think, well, if I did go to Claremont, I don't think I would have really got a regular game like I did at West Perth. So, there was Graham Moss, who was coach, there were the Crackers, there was Warren Ralph, there was John Annear, there was Ken Hunter, there was Wayne Blackwell, Shorty Daniels, Malaxos, Jesus. I'm thinking,
side.
It was a fair side. And then, you had Swan Districts, who were probably the other top side of the year. They'd Stan the Watney and Neesham, and Boucher was the big ruckman, Fogarty. Solon that ended up going to Cullen. So there was some good players and good sides. So, you had to be, and we were unfortunately not up to it. But, in 82, when Dennis Cometti had us, we lost. We won the first semi against East Perth, and then we eventually got done in the prelim final to the eventual to winners. So, that was about the only glory we had when I came back.
Oh, you made the WA state side in 82, though. That's pretty big. And actually, I reckon you might have had a kick and a catch against MH on that day too.
I think I did,
sorry, it might have been. Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah. No, it was 82, I think.
Yeah.
That was once again. I had a pretty good year under Dennis, and then got picked in the state squad, and then eventually made the team. So that started the process of people looking at you a little bit longer and harder from the east, and remembering in those days there was only 12 sides. And then in the draft situation there was only 24 picks. So you had to be on the money, and the recruiters had to know what they're doing, because one mistake and wasn't many left.
Well, in 82, in the VFL interstate draft, you were selected at number 11, but in your draft crop, you've got Alan Sidebottom, Gary Shaw, Braden Harper, Peter Motley, Keith Thomas, Brenton Phillips. Gary McIntosh actually had been drafted, but we know that he didn't take that. Grantley Filkey and Greg Anderson. I mean, gee whiz. It's a fair old class.
Well, it wasn't bad, yeah. So, and that's what I mean. Like in those days, and I think Craigie got picked up by Footscray and didn't go in the end either. So and clubs had to make that choice. And then if someone they selected and didn't go, well, it was basically a waste. So they didn't get any credits or get another pick for it. So, but no. So it was a good crop that year.
And then obviously, you've moved from Adelaide to WA, and there you've got to trek all the way across to Melbourne. What were your first thoughts when you arrived at Richmond?
Well, I'd gone from fairly warm conditions and prepared for 4 seasons in one day, as they say. So my dear old uncle, who used to live in Bendigo, was a Richmond supporter, and so that sort of kept that side of the family happy. But my first, crossing into Melbourne, because in those days the clubs didn't play their cards, so they didn't. Everyone was sort of hush hush. So there was no flying you over and having a look at the club and all this stuff like they do now. It was all I done over the phone, and are you interested? And this is what we're going to do, and you had to say yes or no. So I got picked up by Barry Rawlings, who was working for the club. He was a premiership player and captain
Yep.
at Hawthorn and Richmond. So that was my first introduction. He dropped us off at our hotel, Michelle and myself, and then next day was the tan run, the famous tan run.
Yep.
So got off the plane, and next afternoon at 5 o'clock, I was running the tan.
At least you're an athlete, though, Palmer. You would have been okay still in that regard.
No, I hated it. I did my head.
You still would have been all right, though. You still would have done a reasonable time.
Okay. It was okay, but I know it's a mental thing. It really is.
Yeah.
And I remember one year, this was my first year, which was Francis Burke in '83, and it seemed to be everyone was doing it. You know, everyone was running the tan just to get the times and whatever. But I became very good mates with Greg Strawn because he was the full back and I was in the back pocket. And poor old Strawny, no disrespect, like he was probably the other side of 90 kilos, and he's trying to run the tan like all us little whippets were trying to do in a realistic time. But the poor bugger struggled. He did it 8 times that year. Because you weren't allowed to train unless you
did the time,
until you achieved your time. You weren't allowed in the main training group. You had to do extra.
Wow.
And I remember we were playing Hawthorn at Moe, which is fair distance east out of Melbourne for a pre-season. And Strawny had to run the tan on the Saturday morning so that he could play against Hawthorn.
It's a fair warm-up.
So he did his time because I was in the car with him on the way down there. So he did his time. He's absolutely stuffed from doing the tan. And then he's got a front up in those days, which I think might have been Dunstall and Brereton and everyone else in a pre-season game.
Fair preparation.
Oh, wow.
So, they were the fun days for sure.
So out of this, Pete, in Palmy's time at Richmond, 83 to 88, they were very stable, the coaching ranks at Richmond. He only played under Francis Burke, Mike Swamp Fox Patterson, Paul Sproul, Tony Jewell and Kevin Bartlett. So it was certainly nice and set routine. Who. Yeah.
It's a who's who.
So...
Sounds a bit like what Carlton are going through now. Yeah, it was. That was the interesting thing because they lost the '82 flag against Carlton that year, and they were probably red hot to win it in '82.
I was there at that game,
and because that was my first game in '83 was the unfurling of the flag at Princes Park. It was known.
Yeah.
So you've got all these Carlton wankers in the stand and whatever, and unfurling the flag and singing the song, and then they did us in the end, and it was hard because Mickey Malthouse had left, Clokey had left, Jeff Rains had left, and Brian Wood.
Yeah.
So when you look back at '82 and you look at the grand final side, and then you're thinking, okay, well, shit, I'm lucky. In 6 months' time, I'm going to be playing with all these blokes. And then when you arrive, 3 of them are not there.
Yeah.
So and then once you're in the joint, you find out a little bit inside information of what happened and da-da-da-da-da, and then we fall into the trap of you're not successful, well, you're sacked. That has been, if you're a coach, you're out. And that was very testing times for the players because, Octa Wilson and dear old Graham Richmond in those days.
Yeah.
If you weren't successful, they found it pretty easy to get rid of you. So all those coaches over all those years, you had to sort of recharge again and go again with different personalities and everything else.
Is it a good time to tell him that I'm a Carlton supporter?
That's all right.
It's all good.
Palmy will get stuck in you.
Absolutely.
I admit too, Palmy, though, you played most of your footy at Norwood on a wing or half-forward flank. And I'll be watching a Richmond game and thinking, and you were playing mainly half-back, back pocket. I think, geez, for goodness sake, Richmond, you're struggling. You get Palmy forward. It didn't happen enough as far as as I liked. And you did kick 5 in a game against Eston in 85 when they finally put you forward.
Yeah. Well, I did kick 5 that day. I think we only kicked about 10, but the problem was Essendon kicked about 25. So, you sort of always ask the question that, Norwood was a wing on half forward. West Perth, I was sort of centre ruck rover, half forward type of thing. So, Berkey started me off in the back pocket. I think, at that time was just to get in and find your rhythm and see how it all works without any pressure about being thrown in the middle. But we did have a fairly significant midfield in those days with Dale Waitman and who was the Bazza Rollings, of course, was in there. So, so that was probably great in the first year. But because I ended up playing I played all games in my first year.
In your first 3 years, you played all 22 every game.
Yeah. So I must have sucked up to the first 3 coaches pretty good. So that was sort of progression, where do they put you and that type of thing. So it was also relying on who they were recruiting, because they went heavily recruiting at Collingwood there for a while and Hawthorn also. So, it was, I was just happy to to keep getting a regular game, whether it was my spot or not. Well, there were plenty good players that played in the back line.
Can I throw a bar back? The win-loss record against Carlton was 2 wins for Palmy and 7 wins for Carlton.
Fucking Carlton.
Yeah,
I'm only joking, mate. It's all good.
No, they weren't glory days. They were definitely not glory days when I was I was there. So
So I also note that you only played 1 game at Junction Oval, and then the rest obviously at the MCG.
Yeah. I think most of them were at the G, but we travelled. So, Arden Street and, Windy Hill and Moorabbin with, cold showers and mud from the sprinklers being on a Friday night before. We sort of got around, not like the under roofs now that they're accustomed to.
Now, obviously back in that era, Sydney, obviously at the SCG, West Coast at Subiaco and Carrara, Brisbane Bears back in the day. Playing and travelling was a whole new thing, wasn't it?
Well, people forget or they don't want to be reminded, but we actually had a day job in those days. So, we would work all the day and then we would religiously train at 5 p.m. on a Monday, Tuesday or Thursday. And then, so to get off work, well, that's sort of ate into your holiday leave or no pay with your employment. And then, because you always used to go up the day before, especially up to Queensland and to Perth, we did. That was... one of those things. And then you play in Perth like we did, I think, on the first day and on the plane, and next day you're waking up going to work.
Now, Pete, one of the favourite time with Palmy, the Palms had a holiday shack at Victor Harbour, so it was a traditional spot. And so David would, his time back. So he'd obviously be doing training stuff over that break. So I'd actually join him in doing some of the sand running and just someone to run with him a bit. I could run long distance stuff. I was hopeless trying to sprint, but I could do the long distance stuff. So just did a bit with Palmy. And so David said one day, righto, I'm meeting up with Dale Waitman and Mark Lee. You want to come along? So go along, obviously. And we walk into the Crown, and let's just say all the females there were very interested in Emily and Dee Palm. Dee Waitman's gone to me, well, I think you're drinking with me, pal. So I ended up with Dale Waitman for a while. So Dale does remember that, Palmy.
Flea's. You reckon I can tell the story? I reckon Flea's better.
Oh yeah, Flea's sensational. I agree with that. I've been to a couple of Richmond things with him comparing. He's very entertaining.
Yeah. No, it was. It was good. You know, I'm still good mates with Mark and catch up with Dale when I can, and Greg Strawn and Emmett Dunn and Peter Williams and Bruce Tempney probably my closest. So yeah, we over all these years with family and all our kids have sort of kept in contact, which is no matter where we are, which is good.
And then, of course, the other bit with Dale Waitman and Palmy, this isn't as structured as the written article on you, so we can let a bit more out on this side of things.
Absolutely.
And let's go through how the Aboriginal side, being nominated for the Richmond Aboriginal side, Palmy.
Well, it's once again, it is
bit of fun.
It revolves around a good bloke that's no longer with us, which is Maurice Rioli.
Yep.
And senior.
Yep.
It all started because
David's suntans goes very dark.
Yes.
So keep going, Palmy.
They thought, and probably the sledging that I got over the years on the ground, that you would have thought I was Marlon Pickett, but I'm not, and I sort of have a lot of good mates, and so it just started there. That Flea said to Morris, Palmy is Aboriginal, and you got to pick him because they were short, and so Murray wasn't too sure, but he did. And that time there was Phil Egan there also.
Yep.
And so they named me. But the part that Flea doesn't tell you is that he had a financial interest in this All-Star game because he was organising the game to get up and all the merchandise. So he'd sold tickets and everything else. So the game had to get up. And so he didn't care whether you and I'm not being racial and whatever, whether you're white and you put a little bit of black on or you were that for the day. He was happy. So that's sort of the guts of the story. But no, I didn't end up playing. I was named, but I never played. With no intention of playing.
I think an L Palm, a mother of, may have, and a wife, M Palm, may have
asked a few
gone,
questions.
Oh, David, yes.
Yeah. And it was interesting times because my wife's family was from Kalgoorlie, which is fairly a dominant population there as well. So sort of. They weren't frowned upon, but they thought, I didn't know David was well. So, So he had a little bit of explain to do, little Flea, after that.
That's a fantastic story, mate. Thank you for sharing that one with us, for sure.
I wasn't going to let you off with that one, Palmy.
No.
Playing the VFA for Springvale, Palmy.
Yep. I 78, when was it? 80,
89.
88, which was Bartlett's year, I just had enough. I just, the 6 year, even though I played 100 games and, they weren't, the club wasn't successful and what was I don't know how old I was, but I just sort of had enough. And Emmett Dunn, who was reserves coach, and KB, who was coach, tried to say, look, go around again. But I just had enough. Anyway, I was going to head back to Adelaide, actually.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And then I actually met with Barmy and Wally in at the end of 88. And then I said, look, I'm just sounding you out. If you are interested, because it's dependent on getting a job that I'd applied for, and I won't know till a couple of months. And so they were pretty keen, and that was the guts of the conversation. That's where it started and ended. It was basically to me to decide if I got the job and that I was coming back, and then we go to the next step. So, which didn't eventuate. So. I couldn't go back to Richmond after retiring and that type of thing, and I ended up going to Springvale, who was coached by Phil Malin, who used to be at Woodville. And I played there that in 89 that year.
and
which is a pretty tough comp. It was a pretty tough comp in those days.
You talk about Wally Miller and Neil Barnes, the usual suspects once again, Malcolm. We keep running across these guys who are just masters at their craft at getting players to the club.
Oh, look, I've said this before, but Wally is the best probably administrator going around in my time, and I'd been at three or four clubs. So even though, in my first year he paid me $70 for a win, but that's probably what I was worth. But I think nothing for a loss and nothing for reserves. Well, thanks, Wal. But no, he definitely had his heart in the right place and loved the club. And he's the best in that position by a long mile.
And then you and Michelle decided to go back to WA in 1990, and you had a great year back at West Perth.
Yeah. I actually applied for a job. Springvale was never going to be the start of something else. It was just that because I was still working and had a day job, I had an opportunity to branch out in interstate with that job, so which is what I did, and Perth was the option, so that kept Michelle happy, and we'd had two boys at that stage, James and Sam, so that sort of all fitted in, and I didn't know in those days, but I basically deregistered, so I could have gone to any club, but that was never my intention. I just went straight back to West Perth. One of the old players I used to play with were George McCouchick. He was coach. So that was a pretty easy decision. I think I did that on the phone one day with him and just said, just let me know, and away we went, and it was all done. So, and I will tell you one story. I had a coffee a while ago with Dennis Cometti and a gentleman called Graham Playdell, who was the footy manager at West Perth. And when they'd done the deal to clear me to Richmond, Wally actually rang Graham Playdell wanting some money, wanted some of the clearance money, I found out.
That's not surprising from Wally.
So, and Graham had great delight in telling him that David wasn't on a permit. You actually cleared him to West Perth, so he owed you nothing. So, it was an interesting story all these years later.
Unusual for Wally to make a mistake just quietly.
He's a shrewd operator, Wally. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, didn't happen very often.
Anyway.
And then, so you disappointed, though, West Perth didn't reappoint McCouchick for 92, mate.
Like I came back in 90, and another reason which was enticement, was another good mate I used to play with. It was Peter Menaglio was the captain, and Menags would have made VFL in those days very easily, but it's like anything that didn't get the opportunity. But he's a legend of the West Perth. He's in their team of the century and life member, and I think it was second week in, back in January training, he's come to training and said that he's retiring.
Yep.
So that was a bit of a blow, and then George wanted me to be captain, and I've gone nah. I not being in a joint for 3 minutes. I said no. Let's just take a couple of steps back here. So he appointed the vice captain to captain, and then I accepted the VC job for that year. I won the BNF that year, and then I had no problems in becoming the captain in 91. But that didn't change our fortunes. We were still struggling, and the club sort of, and it was personnel, and it was a lot of things, but. Then they didn't renew George's contract during 91 for 92, so I said, I'll finish up as well, which is what I did.
And you've done a bit of coaching since then, coach Wongan Hills and West Perth Hellenics, and then involved with Corey Buick in coaching the West Perth under-16 development squad.
Yeah. I just went bush one year and once again helping out another mate. He needed a hand, and Cameron Lewis, who used to play at Claremont, he was also coaching up there as well in the same side. So I did that for a year, and then and then helped out someone in D grade Amethyst side once again who were struggling a bit and just needed just a couple of good players to get them up from where they were. We got ourselves in the grand final, but we lost the grand final. So, but that was where they hadn't been. So once again, I left them in a fairly good space to continue on, which is what they did. So and then we go back to sort of the under 14s, under 15, under 16s, little development squads back in those days, which every club had. And so I started with Corey Buick, whose son Rowan played at Brisbane, and his brother Darren played at Essendon, of course. We started that at West Perth, and we did that, I think, both of us for 8 years. So there was about 5 old players that we played together. That was our sort of coaching panel. We had our Johnny Gavinich, our ruckman, Peter Managlio was there, and Jeff Hendricks, whose son Liam's out playing baseball in the States and doing well. He was looking after the back line. So we had a good old crew, and we were all mates. And so we were just trying to find the next best players to come through. And Pete, we found one because we actually coached Stephen Brown, who you eventually picked up.
Isn't it amazing that those friendships with all our guests, have lasted a lifetime as well. So, like what we do with all of our guests, we ask with the best players you've played with now. You've played at 3 different clubs, so we'll start off with Norwood. Who are the best players you played with at Norwood?
Oh God, it's
I can't help you if you need it.
No. It's hard because you can remember I was 17 years of age, and so I looked up to all these players, and whether it was Windows or Woody or Ross Dillon, Craigie was just a fitness nut. Gags, drank and smoked, but he could run all day. Neil Barton was just a massive bloke and ruck, and then Stazzer at half time having a smoke, but he'd still keep up with all the full forwards. It was to single one out I can't, but just naming those is probably the best.
On to West Perth now.
We have a thing here where we can't quite pick our favourite, so we always give 3 or 4, like a Mount Rushmore. So if you list 3 or 4, that's all good for us. We'll move on to West Perth.
Well, once again, when I first started there, the captain was probably the legend of the club called Les Fong. He was a fairly significant rover, best and fairest winner, played state footy. He held the club up for a long period of time. Peter Managlio I spoke about, very, how can you compare him to? Very skinny, 6 foot skinny, run all day, kick both feet, jump like a gazelle. And on WA grounds, like being hard and fast, he was pretty special. I love playing with Addo, what he did and whatever. And looking back, he probably pointed me in the direction that I started and I ended up. Played with both the Duckworths, like Johnny Duckworth, Elizabeth McGarry medalist for you. So had played golf with him actually a couple of weeks ago. So he was pretty good. And Bill, of course, who's a legend at Essendon. And then, as I said, Corey Buick, we've become pretty good mates over the years through his father and whatever. So,
on the West Perth side of things too, full credit to you that you've kept in contact with Brian Adamson with his health struggles and supporting Brian and that too. So credit to you there too, Palmy. Richmond side of things, mate.
Yeah, there's some characters there, but as I said, like General Lee, Strawny, Bruce Tempney, Roachy, Flea, of course, and still catch up with the Ghosts when I can, Jimmy Jess, and Emmett Dunn and whatever, who was my reserves coach and played with him. We're still pretty close. So, and a good mate, Peter Willems, who was the president of the past players, who played a lot of seconds footy, but just missed out on some league games, special league games. So he's been a close friend and whatever for a long period of time. So not necessarily the best player, but just a good all round person. So who's over all these years stayed in touch.
And you did play with a certain Kay Bartlett.
I was going to say,
he mightn't have been a great coach, but geez, he could play.
He lit up the G a few times.
I played his 400th. That was a great day. I think that was 89,000. I was against Collingwood. So that was mad. That's and when you think of the old, Great Southern Stand, it wasn't as big as it is now, but that's a huge crowd.
Yeah.
And, you run out of that famous Richmond-Melbourne race, which is no longer there, which, it's probably just as good as running out of the old the parade race as well. That's a pretty special race, that one. So, yeah.
And
so
then
hopefully they retain that.
Oh, I would hope so. Then we move on to your hardest opponents, mate.
I'd have to say
Michelle. Yep.
Hard tag, I would imagine.
No, that's no.
You're a bit slow there, Palmy.
That's a 3 week suspension. Look, Lee Matthews at Hawthorn, he gave me nightmares. Back in the 80s, it was either Hawthorn or Essendon were playing off in grand finals. So, and being in the back line, well, guess where the ball was? Not 95% down my end. So, he gave me a lesson a couple of times.
He would have given plenty as well. Don't worry about that.
Oh yeah, I know. Pretty good in those days. They weren't bad, those blokes at sledging and letting a few little
backhanders,
barbs,
Muhammad Ali little ones go either. So, they always put me on Mickey Conlon at Fitzroy. We played Fitzroy, so. And I don't know whether it was just a pace thing that, I could at least keep up with him, but he was a mountain of a man. So, we always had a good battle there. Gary Ablett Senior. He's another one that gave me nightmares. I remember one day at the G, I think Julie was coaching, we played Geelong at the G, and Strawny was on him, and he's at the start of the game. He's kicked 7 in the first half, so he's about ripping his hair out, and we're getting flogged, we're getting done. And so halftime meeting in the room, Tony Gill comes up and we look at the board, and there I am. I'm at full back on Ablett, and I've gone, holy shit, this is going to be an interesting second half. Anyway, he kicked 4 on me. He ended up with 11. I think he did that on numerous occasions against us too, but he is the best, Ablett. Don't worry about that.
Some fair opponents there. Matthews, Hawker, Conlon and Ablett Senior. Holy moly.
Ablett had a bit of height on you too, Palmy.
Yeah. But he was tall, he was strong, he was quick, and he was both sides. And he's the best Ablett by a mile. And then they always used to put me on Glenn Hawker at Essendon. So we had some good touch-up battles there. So, And
you've mainly worked in the sporting game, Palmy, after after the bank side of things, and moved
Yep.
around and held various spots there, mate.
Yeah. No, I once again was lucky to get a position in Melbourne that led to my move to WA. So I've been in the sporting wholesale game. It's about 35 years now. So so that's sort of been good and worked itself along with it with the footy as well.
Did I read somewhere that you had the distributing rights for Wilson and Deodora at one stage?
I was a sales rep in Melbourne for Wilson and Deodora when I first when was it 85 I think. Yep. I got appointed there, so I was just a sales rep, and Paul Roos was the other rep for the same company called Active Leisure, and so Roosie did the horse and run, and I did the river run. And so we always had lunch together on a Friday, except when Fitzroy played Richmond the next day, we didn't.
It was a long lunch, yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of my association within the sporting. That's where it started, and then I sort of branched out from there and did my own thing when I shifted to Perth.
Palmy, look, greatly appreciated. The Ashwood Palm friendship goes back a long way. I'll catch up with Jenny probably more than anyone else nowadays side of things. And, greatly appreciate your support over the years, apart from that day you put a hole in my cricket bat. And Michael should have bloody played league football. And, been through a lot. We didn't cover, you also motor neuron and that. Jim passed away sadly with motor neuron. So, there's been plenty of things and over the years, Palmy. Greatly appreciated, mate.
Thanks for having me. I love the chat. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Say hello to Michelle for me, please. Yeah,
I will.
Thank you for letting me in with the Ashwood Palm connection, but also our listeners as well. And I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing the stories, and I'm sure we could probably go on for another hour with some of these stories. But no, we greatly appreciate you taking time out, obviously over in Perth at the moment. And thank you once again.
Okay, beautiful. Stay safe, and thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Palmy. Thanks, mate.